Welcome to the snapshot of 10% Happier. How I tamed the voice in my head, reduced stress without losing my edge, and found self-help that actually works. A true story by Dan Harris. Here, we'll explore the key insights from 10% Happier. Introduction. Like many intelligent, ambitious people, news anchor and author Dan Harris always assumed that meditation was woo-woo nonsense, a pseudoscientific, new age practice of deluding yourself that you were attaining enlightenment. And like many intelligent, ambitious people, he also suffered from an endless internal narrative that focused on and magnified all the stress in his life. Then, one day, this internal stress caused him to have a panic attack on national television, and he began the long journey of exploring how your ego can make your life unnecessarily stressful, and how to quiet that voice in your head with a simple tool called meditation. Though his extensive research and many interviews with self-help gurus of all sorts, some self-proclaimed and some more humble, Harris learned a few key concepts about reducing the stress that's holding you back in life and cultivating a mindfulness that can get you ahead in life and work. 1. Recognize the power your ego has over you. The voice in your head that thrives on comparison and drama is never going to be satisfied and can only keep you from enjoying the present moment. 2. Be simple, not a simpleton. You can let go of unnecessary stress and avoid rude or aggressive behavior without sacrificing drive in your career or your lust for life. 3. Meditate. If you have 5 minutes, you can teach yourself to respond rationally to your thoughts and urges instead of reacting emotionally. Air hunger. At a young age, Harris landed his dream job as a news anchor on ABC. He loved it for more than the prestige. He also loved the investigative and helpful work of giving his viewers insights into any subject, no matter how small or obscure. But he felt the pressure of working with idols like Peter Jennings and performing before millions of people, and more, he found himself unable to quiet the hyper-vigilant voice in his head that was convinced that constant worrying was the only way to ensure his continued success. And the bigger the stories he was assigned, like covering the Taliban in Pakistan after 9/11, the more his ego became addicted to the feeling he calls journalistic heroin. The excitement of being somewhere dangerous and doing it on TV. As a war correspondent, Harris believed in his mission, but he also found himself detached from the horrors of war and focused on rising through the ranks at the expense of good relationships with his colleagues, occasionally becoming temperamental or petty. Returning home after a 5-month overseas stint, he was feeling chronically fatigued, achy, and ill. He tested negative for Lyme disease, HIV, and gas leak exposure. Finally, a psychiatrist diagnosed him. Harris had depression. When he said that he didn't feel sad, the psychiatrist explained that when your emotions are suppressed, they can manifest themselves in the body. He suggested that the violence Harris had numbed himself to overseas was taking its toll, and he recommended antidepressants. But Harris had already begun self-medicating with cocaine and ecstasy. Finally, after numbing himself with drugs and living a high-stakes, high-stress life for too long, Harris had a sudden, obvious panic attack in the middle of a report on Good Morning America. He lost the competent persona he'd spent his life cultivating, and it became very clear to him that he needed to make a change. Unchurched. Though Harris wanted to reduce the stress in his life, once he committed, with the help of a new psychiatrist, he gave up drugs. He began focusing instead on intramural competition at ABC, obsessing over office politics, and convinced that everyone else's good assignments spelled the end of his career. Meanwhile, the woman who would later become his wife helped keep him balanced, and at work, he was now on the religion beat, going from covering its zanier, more off-putting aspects to exploring more profound beliefs and methods of worship. He became more and more aware of his own knee-jerk stereotypes, some unfounded, some not, about the evangelicals he interviewed. When married evangelical pastor Ted Haggard, whom he'd been interviewing for years, was outed as a hypocrite and liar who preached that homosexuality was a sin but actually paid for drugs and gay sex, Harris interviewed him to ask what this meant for his life, his career, and his faith. And though the interview was uncomfortable and Harris's feelings about the pastor he'd come to respect were complicated, what struck him was that Haggard still believed that God cared for him, a larger view that perplexed and intrigued Harris. Genius or lunatic? When a producer floated the idea of interviewing spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle, Harris picked up one of his books and found himself alternately drawn to ideas that were uncannily spot on and frustrated with ones that were hopelessly vague or blatantly pseudoscientific. He agreed to the interview and found the man much the same in person. Some of his claims, like stopping the voice in your head simply by taking a deep breath, struck Harris as unhelpful and grandiose. But others, like the concept that we often live our lives as if the present moment is simply a hurdle to get over so we can get to the next one, resonated deeply with Harris. After all, that was how, he was beginning to realize, he had always operated in his life and career. Happiness, Inc. After interviewing Deepak Chopra and remaining mostly unimpressed, Harris decided to do a series of stories on self-help practices, books, and gurus called Happiness, Inc. He covered 2 stars of the powerhouse self-help movie The Secret, Joe Vitale and James Arthur Ray. But all he found were unfounded platitudes and undelivered-on promises, coupled with what looked suspiciously like a lust for money and power. In fact, Ray was charged with manslaughter after 3 of his followers died in a sweat lodge ceremony, and he was found to be on drugs. Harris found himself disillusioned by the combination of celebrity and silliness he found in most of these gurus and their teachings. But he still felt there was something there that could be useful, if only he could find it. Go meditate. Finally, Harris's then-fiancé handed him the writings of Dr. Mark Epstein, a psychiatrist who incorporated Freud and Buddhism into his approach to trauma and retraining the brain to respond more calmly to stressors. Everything Epstein wrote about the inability to appreciate the presence resonated with Harris, and he began to see the limitations of therapy alone, and to research Buddhism, which immediately helped him be more present and attentive, for instance, at his wedding. When he met with Epstein, who was refreshingly human, he was devoid of the grandiosity of Chopra and Tully, and not interested in fame or monetary gain. He admitted that he had emotions, and he had to work to appreciate the present. Moreover, he had explicit advice for Harris. Meditate. The power of negative thinking. Initially extremely resistant to the idea of meditating, Harris finally decided to give it a go. The rules were simple. Sit comfortably, focus on your breath, and gently redirect your mind to your breath whenever it wanders. He immediately saw how hard it was, with endless environmental and inner distractions, which gave him a newfound respect for it. He resolved to stick with it, trying it for just 10 minutes every day, and soon found that any time he was bored or stressed, he could practice focusing on his breath to jolt himself back to reality with new, calm perspective. He further learned how to apply mindfulness in more upsetting situations, by recognizing his feelings, allowing them to exist, investigating how they were physically affecting his body, and seeing that they were passing feelings and did not define him. For example, he learned that if you felt envious about a colleague's promotion at work, you could recognize your envy, allow it to exist rather than trying to deny it or tamp it down. Assess how it made you feel flushed, jittery, and sweaty, and then unidentify with it by observing that having envious feelings does not mean that you are an inherently jealous, uncompassionate person. The more you do this, the more you train yourself to respond rationally to a stressor, rather than react emotionally. Retreat. Despite his misgivings, Harris let himself be talked into a silent meditation retreat with Epstein's own teacher, Joseph Goldstein. For days, he experienced cynicism, back pain, and excruciating boredom. After several days of unsuccessful meditation, he spoke with Goldstein personally, and finally understood that he was trying too hard to meditate correctly. And then, suddenly, it clicked for him. He had never before understood how you could inhabit the present moment, even as it slipped away. And now he realized that seeing the impermanence of the moment was the point. Understanding the fleetingness of life made you appreciate it more. After this realization, he experienced a few meditation sessions he called magical, with a profound happiness. But he was still more than ready to get back to the real world when the 10 days were up. 10% happier. After returning from the retreat, dealing with job woes and skeptics curious about why he had disappeared for 10 days, Harris was initially frustrated. He continually found himself trying and failing to explain the point of meditation and what it did for him. But one day, a friend asked him why he meditated, and, tired of rambling unconvincingly, he burst out with the explanation that it made him 10% happier. To his surprise, both he and his friend admitted that that sounded pretty good. The new caffeine. Harris pitched an idea for a story on the scientific research behind mindfulness to Diane Sawyer, his colleague, and it was a success. He learned that a Harvard MRI study had found that people who took an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course increased the thickness of their gray matter in the compassion and self-awareness regions of the brain, and actually decreased the areas affiliated with stress. A Yale study showed that meditation practitioners actually deactivated the default mode network region of the brain, the part that obsessively ruminates on the past and future instead of the present, not just during meditation, but in general. And neuroscience research showed that what we think of as multitasking is actually what scientists call continuous partial attention, which results in the very kind of unproductivity that multitasking is supposed to combat. What should you be doing instead? The research points to practicing mindfulness. The self-interested case for not being a dick. Despite all the science backing up the benefits of mindfulness, Harris found himself balking at other Buddhist teachings, most notably the concept of limitless compassion. But then he interviewed the Dalai Lama, who indicated that there is actually a selfish reason to be compassionate. It's beneficial to you because it wears down the ego and makes you feel good, which actually contributes to you doing more good. In fact, neuroscience studies show that doing good lights up the pleasure centers in your brain, much the way eating sweets does. And other research found that the health of people suffering from a variety of illnesses, like AIDS, addiction, and problems that come with plain old age, significantly improved when they did volunteer work. Hide the Zen. When a new head of ABC took over, Harris surprised himself by opting not to try to impress him. Consequently, he was asked to cover fewer and fewer stories of importance, even as big news like the tsunami in Japan, the death of bin Laden, and the royal wedding took the world stage. When he finally spoke to his boss, he was floored when the man told him to not be so zen. Harris realized that his new boss was right. He'd confused acceptance with just not trying very hard, a kind of nihilism that is easy to fall into when you take Zen teachings to their seemingly inevitable conclusion, the misconception that you shouldn't care about anything. When he brought this up with Mark Epstein, he gave Harris advice that hit home, but, as usual, took a while to do so. You have to strive, but with the understanding that the final outcome is beyond your control. Letting go doesn't mean letting go of everything. It simply means knowing your limits and working hard within them. Epilogue. After finishing the concluding chapter of 10% Happier, Harris had a few life developments. He finally became co-anchor on Nightline. He became open to the idea of mindfulness, making him even more than 10% happier. And on assignment in Brazil, interviewing a semi-automatic toting drug lord, he experienced a moment of fear for his survival that made him take stock of his life and realized just how much mindfulness has made him a happier, kinder, but not nihilistic person. Conclusion. On Harris's long, refreshingly clear-headed journey to incorporate mindfulness into his life and work, he learned the science behind meditation and how it deactivates the worrying and stress regions of the brain and actually increases the brain's capacity for compassion and self-awareness. He also came face-to-face with the stigma and cynicism that surrounds meditation and keeps the people who need it the most, high-powered, high-stress professionals like him, scoffing at it rather than pursuing it. So he offers a few practical tips for incorporating mindfulness practices into your life, with a degree of rationality that most self-help books don't offer. 1. Recognize the power your ego has over you. The voice in your head that thrives on comparison and drama is never going to be satisfied and can keep you from enjoying the present moment. 2. Be simple, not a simpleton. You can let go of unnecessary stress and avoid rude or aggressive behavior without sacrificing drive in your career or your lust for life. 3. Meditate. If you have 5 minutes, you can teach yourself to respond rationally to your thoughts and urges instead of reacting emotionally. About Dan Harris. Previously the Sunday anchor of World News, ABC News veteran Dan Harris is now a co-anchor of Nightline, as well as the weekend edition of Good Morning America. He has reported from all over the world, covering controversial faith groups in America, wars in the Middle East, and human rights issues in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. Thank you for listening to the snapshot of 10% Happier by Dan Harris. If you liked what you heard, then make sure to explore the rest of our snapshot library to continue gaining key insights from nonfiction books in a matter of minutes.
Thank you for listening to our quick learning audiobook review series. If you liked what you heard, then check out our channel for more free audiobook reviews. We post new audiobooks every week. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to be first to hear of our latest reviews.